The history of Portland is really the history of transportation because the city grew according to the type of transportation that people were using. So let's take a look and learn how the city changed and how transportation in the city changed. Well, first, we had the city of Portland, and it was actually two cities. There was part of the city, East Portland, was on the east side of the river, and downtown Portland, where the clearing was originally, was on the west side of the river. And as the city grew, people needed to get around. They needed to get from one place to another, and they needed to cross the river. So in 1853, the first ferry opened. Okay, it was called the Stark Street Ferry because it started at the bottom of Stark Street, and it was actually horse operated. Take a look at that the little sketch next to the ferry there. You see there were two horses, and they would walk, and as they walked, they turned a big wheel, and the wheel turned paddles, and the paddles powered the boat. Pretty cool, huh? But only so many people could ride on a ferry. Okay, there's got to be a quicker way. Meanwhile, on the west side of the river, the new business district began to grow. And to get around town, you would either walk, you would ride on a horse, you would get in a carriage. People needed a more efficient way to get around. What the new city needed was a trolley. So the first trolley started operating in 1872, a horse-drawn trolley. They operated on the west side streets, and more trolleys followed. Soon there were more and more all the time. Now in 1887, we got our first bridge, the Morrison Bridge. So finally, the East and the West was connected. Okay? And now these trolleys could actually travel over the river. The city kept getting bigger and bigger. It was time to go electric. Okay, what do we mean by this? Well, the horses could only go so fast and so far. They weren't really efficient. So what people needed was an electric streetcar. In 1890, the first electric streetcar line was built, and more were built as the city continued to grow. There's a picture here of what it looked like downtown. Portland really became a city of streetcars. And the streetcars helped people get around, but it was even more important than that. Not only did the streetcars help people get around the city, but the streetcar lines were built out to places where people didn't even live. That's right. The streetcars themselves went out to different areas, and then houses were built in those areas. In that way, the streetcars sort of led the way in the growth of Portland. Business people would buy plots of land further out from downtown where there weren't as many people, and then they would build a streetcar out to those areas, and they would build houses for people to buy. It was a business. The streetcars led the way for people living farther and farther from downtown. Take a look at this map and see how far the electric train lines and streetcars went. They started connecting all different parts of Portland. Wherever you wanted to go, you were able to find a streetcar to take you there. Selwood, Milwaukee, Oregon City, Gresham, even other cities were connected. Here's an example of a schedule. If you notice, there's the Xavier Street line, Gleason Street line, Upper Albina. These are on the east side of town, Irvington. So these are all east side streetcar lines. Here's another map coming up. Look at all of these streetcar networks. It was really incredible. Streetcars went everywhere. But here's the thing. As the 20th century, the 1900s, as they progressed, more and more people started buying automobiles. There was a new era, a new day was dawning. It was the era of the automobile. And very gradually, Portland transformed from being a city where people got around by streetcars to a city where people got around by regular cars. Because even though streetcars were were efficient and they got you where you wanted to go, you could only go where the streetcar went. And people started to want to go all sorts of places. So it was the era of the automobile. And the city started changing even more, but now it changed uh, along the lines of different streets instead of streetcar lines. Lots of big roads were built for cars and buses, huge parking lots, and all of this meant that, well, the days of the streetcar were over. And by 1950, the last streetcar was shut down. So they lasted quite a long time. But after many, many years of cars and buses, decades and decades, well, the city needed a new change. Think about it. More and more people were driving, and the roads were getting congested. There was a lot of pollution. Gas prices went up and up. People thought, we need to do something different. So guess what? In 1986, they built an electric, not a streetcar, but a light rail called the MAX, which went not everywhere, but it went to key places people needed to go. More and more people started riding bicycles. Okay. And then finally, someone had a great idea. Well, you know how this song goes. Let's build a streetcar line. And in 2001, a new Portland streetcar opened. New lines were built, and new lines continue to be built. Now, there will probably never be as many streetcar lines as there used to be because people still mainly get around by automobiles. But more and more people are riding streetcars. So, as you see, this streetcar saying, why'd they get rid of me in the first place? And there was something new even. The tram, it only runs by OHSU, but it's a new form of transportation. It gets people from up on the hill at OHSU down to the waterfront. So transportation continues to change. There continue to be new forms of transportation. What's going to be next? It's kind of fun to think about. So anyway, the main points I want you to remember from this movie is that streetcars were very, very important. They were really a way of life, but like everything else, that way of life changed. And now we have some streetcars, but mostly cars.